So I'm going to be talking a little bit about Zoroastrianism, which is the faith that I was raised in by my mother. And since some people are not too familiar with Zoroastrianism, I'll start off with a bit of an overview about this religion. It is the oldest monotheistic faith. It was founded in ancient Persia by Prophet Zarathustra, and it teaches the basic tenets are good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, along with telling the truth, charity, purity, reverence for fire, reverence for nature, and just a brief history. As far as the date of origin is concerned, there's somewhat of debate or lack of clarity concerning that, but there are some reports that it dated as far back as 7000 BC. And there were many empires. Persian Empire extended from China to the Mediterranean Sea. It was huge. Many dynasties of this empire. And then basically through the ages, there have been some persecutions that have happened. Most notably around 330 BC when Alexander, quote unquote, the Great, referred to as the accursed by Zoroastrians, came and conquered and caused a lot of havoc and destruction. And then several hundred years later, around 600 AD, when there was the Islamic invasion of the Persian Empire and the forced conversions to Islam, as well as persecutions, and that led to a number of Zoroastrians fleeing to India to seek religious asylum. So those became known as the Parsis. So in present day, we have approximately 120,000 Zoroastrians worldwide. The Parsis in India, and then some Zoroastrians in Iran, known as the Iranis, and then some in North America, some in other parts of the world, but primarily most of them are in India and Iran. So my mom was born in India, and she came to this country when she was a young girl, so she was a Parsi, and she raised me Zoroastrian. One of the main tenets of Zoroastrianism is this concept of good versus evil, and how we have to fight evil with good, and ultimately good will prevail. And in my practice as a Zoroastrian, I do recite some prayers and do some rituals, but to me the more important thing is what I'm actually doing out there in the world. And the animal activism that I've done really gives me a sense of purpose, and I find that it definitely correlates with the core teachings of my faith. And when looking at some of the scriptures and some of the translations, it's remarkable how congruent Zoroastrianism is with a vegan lifestyle, even though a lot of Zoroastrians, most Zoroastrians are not even vegetarian, but I think it's just like in other faiths where there are these core principles, people tend to move away from them over time. They may not be aware of what's going on. Certainly, before factory farming, animals could roam relatively freely within the confines of their outdoor environment, and they had some quality of life before they were slaughtered. Now that's not the case anymore. With factory farming, animals are confined in tight spaces, they're deprived of sunlight, they're deprived of interaction with their fellow creatures, they're treated like objects, they're objectified. They're basically looked upon as production units, rather than living, feeling, sentient creatures with interests of their own that ought to be respected. So this has changed, the last 50 or so years, and it's become more and more of a problem as our population has exploded, and as people have become more and more disconnected from the animals that end up on their plates, to the point where some people don't even realize that milk came from a cow. They think they may know it on an intellectual basis, but they don't actually think about how the milk got to where they're drinking it and what that cow endured, and the fact that dairy cows are mistreated horribly and they're slaughtered far before they would die naturally. In nature, a cow can easily live to be 20, 25, even 30 years. And on dairy farms, they don't last till their 5th birthday even, because their milk productivity declines to where it's no longer profitable to keep them. And once they get udder infections or mastitis, the farmers don't invest in getting veterinary care for them to receive treatment, because it's all about profit to them. So if they have to spend money on treating this sick animal, it defeats the purpose of their business. So they send like dairy cow to slaughter, and then she becomes hamburger. So when people think, oh, well, at least the cow didn't die, they're not aware of the fact that that simply is not the case. And in the case of eggs, the cruelty inflicted on hens that are raised for egg production is unimaginable. These hens are crammed in tiny battery cages, and each hen has less than an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper worth of space, which is not even enough space to spread her wings, let alone engage in natural behaviors like dusting, perching. So there are steps that have been taken. I was very active with Proposition 2, which luckily did pass by a landslide a little over a year ago, in November of '08, and that will allow for animals to have enough space to turn around and extend their limbs, which is a baby step. But I think it's important to realize this is just one step in the direction of ultimately freeing these animals, but it doesn't address the debeaking, which is a painful procedure that involves a hot blade cutting through tender nerve tissue. That is still going on, and this Proposition 2 actually does not take effect until 2015. So while it is a good step in the right direction, and it certainly brought factory farm issues to the forefront of people's minds who before that point really hadn't had much exposure to this issue at all, and that public awareness is a great thing. It's still just one step, and it's really going to be incumbent on all of us to continue to work hard on behalf of these animals. So, and I'm kind of going off there, but